Most people believe that a confession closes a case, but legally it doesn't, because a confession by itself proves nothing. Given the fact that a lot of people can falsely confess for whatever reason, whether it's getting to a better prison, whether it's getting to lower security, whatever reason they have, there are perks to potentially confessing to something that you didn't do in some occasions. Not saying most people would do that, but there are people that actually do that. I even paused on this myself because in the law, words matter. A confession is not the same thing as proof. And that is why a confession in and of itself is not enough. For instance, you don't know where the person got the idea to confess, what facts they're confessing to, whether or not the facts are true. In criminal law, let's talk about the legal frame. In criminal law, there's a concept called corpus delicti. It means the body of the crime. Not literally a body, but proof that a crime occurred and that someone is responsible for it. Okay? So this is actually going into Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy recently, well, actually as of today, was actually found culpable for the crime. But before his execution, Ted Bundy confessed to multiple murders. Some were confirmed, meaning with evidence or corpus delicti. Others were not fully supported by independent evidence. And so there's a key distinction here. A confession is evidence, especially if things actually line up and corroborate what the person is saying. However, they can't stand alone, right? So you can't just say, oh, we have this confession, because that's not enough without actionable and real proof that a crime occurred. And this rule exists because people lie, people exaggerate, maybe to get fame or to get notoriety or whatever reason, seek control over the narrative, or insert themselves into stories. Especially people who have issues with mental illness will oftentimes call families and say, hey, I'm your missing daughter, or something along those lines. In cases like this, a confession can still matter. For families, it can bring acknowledgement, and that's actually what happened in this particular case. This woman was actually, I believe, murdered in Utah, and he had confessed before he was executed in the Florida electric chair. And so it brought something to the family. They were actually able to get closure in some ways, and a piece of truth, and sometimes a sense of peace, and ultimately, I'm all about victims' rights. I believe that they go through a lot, especially when they lose their family members. It's extremely sad. But the problem is it creates a tension. Emotionally, it can feel like closure, but legally, it's not enough. The heart can accept a confession, but the law requires proof. So, final thought, we want answers. But in the legal system, certainty has to be proven, not just spoken. So you might be asking yourself what actually happened. She was believed to have gone to a Halloween party on her own, alone. And apparently she somehow ran into Mr. Bundy. I don't know if he was wearing a sling or whatever he used to do. Remember that, to try to get people to notice him. She was found, I believe, in the side of the road or a highway in Utah. And so they ended up doing DNA testing. I believe Ted Bundy was executed around like 1989. And so they had DNA. And so they tested the DNA. And the DNA proved that it was Ted Bundy's DNA. So in closing, a confession might sound like truth, but in the law, truth has to be proven. So thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. This is the first story I've posted in quite a while. I thought it was an interesting story, and it took 51 years to find closure, which can be extremely difficult, I'm sure, for family members. And most of her family members are probably no longer with us. But ultimately, there's going to be no trial. but ultimately, maybe the people that are surviving have a little bit of hope and have a little bit of peace. I mean, I don't know how much peace you could have after losing someone that you love so much. So ultimately, I just want to say thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney, and I have 2 podcasts. One is Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress, which is on YouTube. And the other one is Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion, which was just dealt with Mr. Bundy. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.